Well, hello and welcome to this week's A Photographic Life. Just me on my own this week, but a lot of information to impart to you. I think it would be fair to say that one of the major sort of meeting points for photography globally is Paris Photo. I know London Photo has tried to do a similar thing, and Paris Photo is trying to spread its wings in other cities. But the original remains, I think, perhaps the most important. I have been to Paris Photo on a number of occasions over the years, and it's been enjoyable. I have to say the major works being shown in the Grand Palais itself, which is the centre of the whole thing, have never really been of great interest to me. That's where the big galleries are, selling photographic prints. However, what has been interesting, I suppose, to me, have been those small fringe exhibitions that occur all over Paris during the time of the Paris Photo itself. Anyway, as I said, the main part of Grand Palais seems to be about selling prints and selling books. You can see many great names in the little photo book booths which different publishers set up, signing their books. And in itself, I think that's a great opportunity to meet some people who you've only ever heard their name or seen their work. You can actually meet them in the flesh. But the selling of prints, the whole gallery element of it is, I think, a very interesting area to explore. Because intrinsically, with the death of publishing, of editorial, of advertising, photography, all of these things have merged, and I think it would be fair to say for any photographer, have reduced in number, in impact, and in budgets. So the idea of selling a print is very attractive to a lot of photographers. But of course, if you're going to sell prints at Paris Photo, you need to be represented by a gallery. And that to me does seem like a very black art. I know a number of photographers who are represented by galleries who never sell a print, who may have the occasional exhibition within the gallery every 3, 4, 5 years, but that would be at best. So intrinsically, the photographer is left, I suppose, to actually sort of sell prints on their own, off their website. I saw an article in an online section of Art News called The Back Room. And this article was written by somebody called Margaret Carrigan. And she was talking about Paris Photo, which it's the 27th edition, I should say. So it's been going a while. And she wrote this article, which I think is good, is accurate, and gives a very interesting insight into the way in which some people view photography as a commodity. And I've always said this with photography. You know, when people talk to me about art photographer or professional photographer, or commercial photographer, I always say that all photography is commercial if a commercial transaction takes place. Now, that may be getting commissioned by a brand or a magazine, but it also may be in the selling of a print or of a book. That's a commercial transaction taking place right there. Therefore, all photography is commercial, in my mind. I suppose in a sense you could say that some work comes from a different place. It's the initiation of the work can be more personal if it comes from an art perspective. But that doesn't make it less commercial. Anyway, back to this article. I'm going to read it to you. It's quite long, but I think it's worth going through and also reflecting upon. I'm going to leave you to do that reflection. Anyway, it says this. Price points for photographic works have historically been lower than other fine art categories. There are two main reasons for that. One is that most photos are editioned rather than unique. The other is that photography has not always been seen as fine art and sometimes still exists in a liminal space between art and broader visual culture. There were $1 million pieces at this year's fair, though. The most expensive was a collage gelatin silver print from Gordon Matter Clark's Splitting series, priced at $2.7 million. In the lower and mid-market range, prices have remained fairly stable. That doesn't mean the photo sector has been immune from the recent downturn that the art world has suffered. However, it has so less so. ArtNet's data shows that photography sales at auction are down just over 10% so far this year compared to last year. In contrast, there was a nearly 30% drop in art sales at auction in the first half of 2024 versus the same period in 2023. What has grown is that many dealers are feeling that and seeing an institutional interest in photography, especially for lesser known or historically marginalised artists, mirroring a larger trend within the art market. To that end, Paris Photo introduced a new curated voices sector this year to spotlight overlooked practices. Early sales from the sector included 6 works by Brazilian photographer and activist Claudia Andujar, priced at $12,000 each, brought by Vermelho Gallery, and a piece by Chinese artist Kai Dong Dong, known for blending photos and ready-mades. Brought by Shanghai's M97 Gallery, it sold for $15,000. While the market remains dominated by traditional photographic prints, there is an increased presence of digital art at Paris Photo, although it is largely limited to the digital sector, which was introduced in 2023. Still, it's a sure indicator of the growing acceptance of digitally created and AI-generated work within the field. Office in part bought works by 2 artists who are working with AI. Ana Maria Caballero and Jonas Lund. When asked how much of a market there was for AI works, Johanna Nuschaffer, who co-founded the Berlin Gallery, said, "It depends on what you're selling." 2 of the 3 Caballero works, priced at roughly $10,000 each, had already found buyers within the opening hour of the fair. The Colombian-born artist feeds her poems about collectively imagined creatures, cryptids and mythical figures like the Loch Ness Monster into open-source AI models to create collectively imagined images. Buyers receive a 5-piece digital set consisting of the original poem, the collage, and 3 AI-generated image files. By the end of the second day of the fair, 10 of the 15 galleries included in the digital section had reported sales. At Louise Alexander Fellowship, 11 animation works from Trevor Paglin's Evolved Hallucinations series sold for $3,000 each. Nearby, La Collection sold out Jack Butcher's Latent series, a collection of 80 unique works including both physical prints and NFTs, for a total of around €300,000. Nuschaffer said that there is still a lot of collector education to be done before digitally rendered and AI works are fully embedded in the market, but people are interested. I think there's so much to unpack in that. I'm going to put it over to you to think about, analyse, and maybe comment on. You can find me on Blue Sky. That's where we all are now, isn't it? And you can also find me, of course, still on Threads. Or you can drop me an email through the website, unitednationsofphotography.com. Either way, I'm really keen to hear what you've got to say. I think it's very difficult for photographers to actually put a price on their work or their price on a print. It's much easier for a gallery to do that or a dealer to do that because, of course, the reality is that they know their clientele. They already have a set client base and they know what kind of figures those people are willing to pay and how much money is sitting in their budgets. That's particularly the case if you're selling into large corporate entities, images for office spaces, for example, which is a big market area. But I suppose one of the other areas where you might get a sense of what an image is worth is through the auction world. And as I was just saying, the auction world has been hit, as most areas of our economic climate world, everything we do has been hit. But I saw something the other day which I thought was kind of interesting, and it caught my eye primarily because I can remember the photograph actually coming to me when I was working on a magazine as a free press print. Back in the day, as they say, when a film came out, you would be sent as a magazine a group of photographs which may have been taken on set, or they may be being used to advertise a big film that was coming out. In those days, we used to have filing cabinets, A to Z, A to Z, and every time a film came out and those prints came in, we would just drop it into the appropriate letter space. And then if we did an article on a particular actress or actor and we knew which films they'd be in, we'd go to the filing cabinet and we'd find images of those films. Obviously, this is pre-computers and this is pre-internet. But that's how it used to work. Anyway, one of those films that did come out, which was a big film at the time, was Angel Heart. A great film, even to this day, I do recommend it. And it featured the actor, somewhat troubled actor, Mickey Rourke as a private eye. Well, I noticed that Phillips, the auction house, had an online auction recently. And one of the images from that film, one of the images I remember being sent actually, is for sale. It's by the photographer Helmut Newton, who'd obviously been given access to the set at the time, and the images were used for promotion of that film. It was in 1986, and the print that's being sold is a silver gelatin silver print, 58 by 37.5 centimetres, signed, titled, dated by the artist, numbered 2 out of 10 in another hand, all in pencil, Monte Carlo copyright credit, and reproduction limitation stamps all on the verso. Well, I would have had one of these prints. Now, I don't know what quality this print is. It says it's a silver gelatin silver print. I presume it was made at the time, but we were certainly sent these prints. Well, the estimate for this print in the online auction is £4,000 to £6,000 sterling. And there was one bid sitting with it at the time that I saw it, and that current bid was at the starting point of £4,000 for that print. Well, take me back to 1986. Who would have thought that that print I had in my hand could possibly have been worth that kind of money? Now, I'm not saying that the print I had was of the same quality. It may be, it may not. I can't remember. However, I think what that does show is one of the points I was making at the beginning of this particular episode, which is that all photography is commercial. That image was a commercial image and is now being sold at auction. It's no different from any contemporary art practice or artist print, whatever you want to talk about the work, or however you want to describe the work, arriving at a similar auction or being sold by a gallery. All work at the end of the day has a currency to it. Whilst we're talking about art, I'm going to bring two elements of art together, modern art and poetry. I recently saw a little series of poems, or long poem, I'm not quite sure how you describe it, by the writer Brian Bilston. It's described as, or it's titled, A Brief History of Modern Art in Poetry. I'm going to read it to you. Number 1, Impressionism. Roses sway in softened reds, violets swim in murky blues, sugar sparkles in the light, blurring into golden hue. Number 2, Surrealism. Roses are melting, violets are too. Ce n'est pas le sucre. Keith is a giant crab. Number 3, Social Realism. Roses are dead, violence is rife. Don't sugarcoat this bitter life. Number 4, Pop Art. Roses go blam, violets go pow. Sugar is cool, you are so wow. Number 5, Conceptual Art. Roses are red, coated in blood. A deer's severed head drips from above. And finally, number 7, Pointillism. Roses have black spot, you're spotty too. Sugar is granulated, I'm dotty for you. And I should say there was one additional one, which was minimalism. But of course, he didn't write anything for that. Well, what was interesting to me about seeing that, apart from I thought it was quite clever and quite funny, and I suppose there's a challenge out there to do something similar with photography, perhaps. Maybe one of you want to have a go at that and share it with me and share it with the world through social media. But it also made me think about poetry, which is something I often use as a metaphor for photography, in that way that, to me, poems are invariably word images created from language, which may or may not have narrative, but which will sort of attempt, through a series of observations, to connect with the reader a thought, an emotion, whatever that may be. That's what poetry does, of course, we know that. But there again, it started to make me think about how few photographers actually turn to poetry as a source or as a collaborative area. And then I was thinking about Faye Godwin, the British landscape, primarily photographer, who of course created images in association with the work of Ted Hughes, the poet. And then I thought of Norman Macbeath, somebody who has contributed to this podcast previously, telling us what photography means to him. The Scottish photographer who's done a lot of work with poetry, a particular body of work I'm aware of with the poetry of Robert Crawford. Then I started to think, well, as a big Bob Dylan fan, as you all know if you've been listening for any length of time, Dylan is sometimes described as a poet, sometimes not. That's up for debate. But either way, the idea of the lyric being a starting point for photography, the song being the starting point, the narrative song and the interpretive song, the abstract song, the latest music and the oldest music. And I suppose in a way, where it led me to was that quite often when photographers don't know where to go with their work or where to find inspiration, that the written word is often a fantastic source for that. Of course, you could also include the novel or the factual book. But either way, those sources are out there for us to explore. And poetry seems to me to be a really good place to start. So once again this week, I seem to have unintentionally slipped into the area of maybe giving a suggestion or being vaguely helpful to you in your photographic practice. As always, not by telling you how to use a camera or a lens, Photoshop, or read a manual or tell you about the latest thing you can buy, but by quite simply just going down to a local library or a second-hand bookshop or a bookshop and just having a look through the poetry section. I should imagine it's quite a quiet area, a good one for contemplation. Anyway, contemplation is certainly something I've been doing over the last few weeks or so as I rapidly approach my 60th birthday. The next time you hear from me, I will have reached that age. That's definitely a time for looking back and thinking. Not necessarily melancholy, but definitely a time to continue to take care.